Huh. I thought you'd release earlier. But you're definitely the one. It has been a while since you released the game, hasn't it?
What do you want?
Oh, you already know the answer to that.
Whatever it is you seek, I do not have it. You should move on.
And here I thought you were going for the game of the year, but while all of these other games have been running away with the title, you hide out here in the woods. Like a coward.
You do not want this fight.
Oh. I'm pretty sure I do. Story time. The first time I played God of War 2018, I did not like it. I gave up halfway throughout the game. Fast forward a couple of months and I was hanging out at the bar with a couple of friends of mine and I met a guy who worked for Guerrilla Games. So obviously we started talking about, well, games. And he was like, hey, God of War 2018 is the best game ever, right? And I was like, yeah, I didn't like it very much. He then proceeded to spend the rest of the evening explaining to me why I was wrong, why it's the best game ever, and why I never should have been born. The last part isn't true, the rest is. So I followed his advice and I tried it again, and I loved it this time. I think that the main reason why I didn't like it the first time I played it was because I hyped it up way too much. Not only that, but I was also playing it alongside other games at the time that were also really good but really different. So I started rushing through God of War. Why even mention this? Well, Ragnarok is probably the most anticipated game of the year, next to Elden Ring. So once again, I created a hype and a bias for myself that I needed to love this game. I needed to like it. I never buy games on release because every time I've done so in recent history, they turned out to be dog shit. So essentially, once again, I set the game up for failure, as it could never exceed the love I had for the first game and the high standard that I created for it. So with all that being said, is Ragnarok even good? Is it even worth it? Yes. Yes. Normally a review would name off all of the bad things, all of the good things, and at the end give you a final verdict if the game is worth it or not. I want to turn things around. I'm letting you know right here what the final verdict is. This game is a must play. It's amazing and in my opinion the game of the year. Or at least should be in the top 3. Yesterday I came home, I started playing this game and I came again. It's that good. Within the first 30 minutes of playing it, it made me laugh, it made me tear up, and it made my jaw drop at how good it looked. It's all around amazing. Now that the final verdict is out of the way, I'm gonna name off some of the things that I disliked about the game. Why? Because they're so small, like almost not even worth mentioning, that I want to get them out of the way now before we get into the good stuff. And then the rest of the video is gonna be me jizzing all over this game and letting you know why it's that good. Probably could have formulated that a bit better for the algorithm, but fuck it. What's funny is that I had quite a list of things that I disliked in the first couple of days of playing, but the further I got into the game, the more things I kept removing from it. Normally, the more you play a game, the more you start finding out about things that you dislike. In this game, it was the other way around. Mostly because a lot of the things that were really repetitive, already used in 2018, or just completely unorthodox compared to 2018, were slowly but surely removed or explained why they did it in that way. But you'll understand what I mean the further we get into the review. You ready?
No.
Well, I am. Let's go. All of the stuff you'd expect is still here. You can still punch, kick, and throw enemies around like the tissues that are stuck on your desk. You can still throw your axe to hit things that are far away, and use the blades of chaos and your fists to, well, fist people. The first thing I noticed that I kind of disliked is now whenever you stun an enemy and hit them with one of those R3 attacks, you always use either the Blades of Chaos or the Leviathan Axe. A lot of animation in the last game just let you rip people apart with your fist, but now it's either Blades or Axe. I know it's a pet peeve, but for a game that's like 80% fighting, it becomes a nuisance after a while. Other than that, God of War's combat system is very unique. It has found a very fine mixture between being a arcadey beat 'em up hack and slasher and a very slow paced but impactful last second response type of gameplay. It's arcadey in the sense that enemies have a lot of health and you have to hit them a lot before they die, and you can also cancel out your attacks without input delay, I should mention, at the last second to either block or jump out of the way. But it's impactful in a way that whatever Kratos is hitting looks like it really fucking hurts. The last thing you want in a game that's like 80% combat is for the combat to feel like you're only tickling the enemy instead of actually fucking them up. So they nailed that. But one thing that's even worse than unresponsive and shitty gameplay is repetitive gameplay with the same type of enemies over and over again. Ragnarok has quite a lot of enemies, but not a ton, which is kinda weird to me. What's even weirder is that they recycled a lot of enemies from the old game, some of them even using the exact same animation you used in 2018. So enemies like Draugr, Ancient Ones or Soul Eaters, or Soul Stealers, Dark Elves, they're all back. Now it makes sense as we're still stuck in the 9 realms. So it's not like within those couple of years since the last game suddenly 1,000 new enemies have spawned out of nowhere. But still, a bit more variety would have been welcome. Fuck. To be fair, I would rather fight just a handful of unique enemies than like 100 recycled ones, but once again, a bit more variety would have been dope. However, that's not the only recycled content that they used from the old game. All of the puzzles that were there in 2018 are back in the exact same manner. Those blue chests with the bells that you have to hit within a certain time period, those weird vines you have to hit in one motion, otherwise they respawn again. Even those light bulbs that you have to carry around and shove them to the ground to create a bridge. This sounds negative at first, I know, but 90% of this stuff is all optional, so you don't have to do it. It's not like the main story is only building bridges and smashing up plants. It's also very lengthy. The moment I finished the main story, my playtime was just under 40 hours, but I also did a lot of side content, so how long exactly the main story took me, I have no clue. But yeah, those 40 hours with a lot of side content, I'm nowhere close to 100% in the game yet. So I think that if you want to 100% everything, you're looking at roughly 60 to 80 hours. Something like that. Now that we're talking about gameplay anyways, you might notice how smooth everything looks. This video is encoded and uploaded in 60 FPS Quad HD resolution, which were also the settings they used in game. Some of it is 1080p as the PS5 recorder can only save recent gameplay with those settings. You can also play the game in 4K if your monitor or TV supports it. I prefer frames over quality and I only have a Quad HD monitor, so I played the entire game with these settings. Oh, and the 60 FPS are solid. Obviously the PS5 doesn't have an FPS counter, but I never noticed any dips or stuttering, not during exploration nor the fighting. However, if your monitor or PS5 supports a refresh rate higher than that, you can even play the game on 70 to 120 FPS if you have a HDMI 2.1 cable. I do. Everybody who has a PS5 does, as it comes with the box that the PS5 came in. If I were you though, I'd just play around a bit, turn scaling on the main menu and see what happens. Now that we're in the menu, Ragnarok has insane customization and accessibility options. A text-to-speech option, audio boost for the hearing impaired, full remapping of buttons. You can use the touchpad to hide your compass, hide enemy health bars, change the color of whatever you please, different types of auto-aim. These are the best options I've seen in a console game till this date. So what's the issue? Well, there's no FOV slider. Yeah, like the number one thing people care about next to the option to turn motion blur off isn't present. They must have had their reasons, but it does still really suck. The story, just like last time, is solid, which may be the understatement of the year. Whenever you think the ending is in sight, new characters, plot twists and events just pop up out of nowhere, like an unwanted child. But I liked it a lot less than I did the 2018 story, at least at the start. How in 2018, from the moment you started up the game, you knew what you were doing, you know who you were, you knew who your kid was, and you knew why you were going on this journey up this mountain to spread the ashes of your deceased wife. Ragnarok takes a lot of time to set the pace and make clear what the setting is about. Overall, the amount of memorable moments and crazy events happening has increased a lot compared to 2018. Once again, it just takes a little while to get there. So if you are from the very first moment hoping it's like all gonna be action, 24/7 fighting and stuff like that, that's not gonna happen. So good thing that the story is incredibly lengthy. All of this is also obviously highly dependent on difficulty settings. From playing around with them a bit, I can tell you that the difficulty settings work pretty fine actually. Most games, when they introduce difficulty settings, just increase the enemy's health and the damage they do and they reduce yours and they're like, here, difficulty. Like, no, you just made fights longer but not more fun or more challenging. This works pretty well in Ragnarok. Playing on the lowest difficulty makes sure that enemies are essentially just standing there. They don't attack simultaneously and they just wait for you to hit them. But on the highest difficulty, they all attack at the same time and are a lot more aggressive, attacking constantly. Lastly, bugs and glitches. In my entire playthrough, I encountered 2. That's it.
One of them was enemies being stuck beneath the map, or even me myself getting stuck beneath the map, forcing a reload. The other one was where audio either cut out or kept overlapping constantly with no way to fix it, also forcing, you guessed it, a reload.
These things can differ a lot from person to person. Some people play a game and it's completely falling apart. Other people play it and it's fine. For me, it was fine. And from what I've kind of seen on the internet, there aren't really any known big issues that they're working on right now. So, holy shit, a game on release that works. Who would have thought, right? That's it. Every bad thing that I could think of after playing this game for like a week. Let's talk about the good stuff now. First of all, the game is
Slow.
if this is a good thing, is obviously very subjective. Some people like very fast gameplay, some people like it a bit slower. However, if it wasn't obvious yet, those games prior to 2015, where the entire game was just running through everything, hacking and slashing and murdering every single person you came across, that's not the direction this game is going for anymore. Kratos has changed, his priorities have changed, he's not the young man trying to kill everybody anymore, so just be aware of it. Anyways, I like it. People say you shouldn't compare games to each other as it's disrespectful to the developers, but it's my YouTube channel, so I can do whatever the fuck I want. It's very comparable to Red Dead Redemption 2. Very slow start, a lot of places where you're forced to walk and just listen to what people say, very lengthy cutscenes that can easily take 4 or 5 minutes, and a lot of side content to distract you from the main story. Speaking of the story, I can obviously not share too much about these slow parts and the lengthy cutscenes, as it would spoil the entire game, and well, liking the story is subjective anyways. Atreus is, I don't know, I guess a teenager now. So he isn't this wimpy kid anymore that you constantly have to protect and drag around trying to save his ass. At the end of the first game, you found out that Atreus isn't really Atreus. He's Loki. Not low-key, but Loki. So as you can imagine, the game continues to build on that and spends a lot of time trying to figure out what being a god means, what being called Loki means, the fate of the giants, the fate of the world, etc. And Loki get intertwined in the foretold end of the world, or as the Norsemen called it, Monday. Ragnarok.
Killing things gives you XP, which you can use to unlock new skills. The skill tree works perfectly, as every skill actually unlocks something that is useful and, more importantly, easy to remember. Some abilities are more passive, like simply doing more damage to frozen or burning enemies, which is perfect as the combat is quite fast, so you don't want to waste time memorizing 20 different combinations. Unless my memory serves me wrong, 2018 had a lot of armors, so many that you at one point were switching like every hour or so. Ragnarok dialed this back. Armor is easier to find and upgrade and there's less of it, reducing the overall clutter and loot grind. Even though it won't change the gameplay all too much, there's an armor style for every type of player. If you rely heavily on special abilities, use armor that increases the cooldown effect. Do you want to be close to the enemy? Upgrade strength. Play more aggressively? Get a shield that only functions if you parry at the last second. Or armor that slows down time whenever you perform a perfect dodge. It keeps gameplay fresh and engaging, instead of just using one overpowered armor set or ability for the entire game. What's also a nice bonus is that whenever you reach max level with the armor set, you can change the appearance to whatever you please. Same goes for amulets, which enhance your current stats to make your attack stronger if you're above a certain amount of health, or whenever you perform a perfectly timed dodge. These can be found after beating bosses or crafted in the shop at Brock and Sindri.
Levels are now a lot more vertical, comparable to the old games, funnily enough. You tend to swing around more and drop to levels below you to fight the enemies there, instead of everything being on a plain level. If you grab onto a ledge and immediately attack, or jump down from one, you do a special attack. This is a nice addition and it adds to the fluidity of the gameplay. Sometimes you are done with a part of the story and then Atreus or Mimir will drop an obvious hint like, hey, we're not in a rush, why don't we explore a bit? Now, you can skip this, but just don't. As essentially these parts will easily add dozens of hours to your gameplay. These are the parts where the collectibles, the puzzles, the mini bosses will all come into play. Not only that, but it also gives a lot of room for character development and lore. Will you miss out on entire experiences if you don't do these? Yes, honestly you do. Like, to be honest, most of the boss fights in the optional areas were a lot more fun than the boss fights in the main story. Now you might think that's kind of weird, but it makes sense though, right? Because you don't want people to get stuck on the main story in a game that's supposed to be about the story. So you can kind of storm through the main story bosses, but all the optional ones are difficult to say the least. Even more important than that, the game does the one thing that whenever a game does it, automatically makes me love it even more, which is it values your time, mostly. There are still some parts where they throw in like some shitty one hit and they're dead enemies or a stupid blockade, but other than that, all of the side content is worth your time and money tenfold.
I'm fairly certain they did this to reduce loading times. I say reduce loading times, but that would be a lie, as just as in 2018, there are no loading screens. The game is just like watching one entire cutscene from start to end, without any cuts, any loading, none of it. I think that while you're busy with these time-wasting enemies or really simple puzzles that you fix within 10 seconds, that the next area is loading. That's my guess, at least. I'm no game developer. I just spend my days in my bedroom, yelling at my phone, making game reviews. We're gonna earn YouTube money.
You might think, alright, so except for some core gameplay mechanics that have changed and the story improving on last time, not all that much has changed. And you'd be right. Technically, if you would look at it from a very bland and grey perspective, as the game is so much more than that. We have reached a point where acting in games has exceeded certain acting in movies.
That is exactly what I am.
Not to me!
This review hasn't gone up because I was lazy or anything, it was because it took me that long to finish everything. This game was gonna take you weeks to 100%. I know most people don't care about 100%ing a game, but the thing that I do have to mention is that I hate 100%ing games. It's almost never worth your time, but all of the content here is fun. There legit wasn't one thing that made me think, this is boring, hurry it up already. Even the collectibles are not a nuisance in a way that if you just, well, look with your eyes instead of your ass, you run into them. So it's not one of those things back in the day with GTA 4 where you had to like shoot 200 pigeons. Now you just have to slaughter 48 ravens. I don't know what it is with game developers and animal abuse, but whatever. You do you, guys. I'm not judging, I guess. You're essentially paying 70 to 80 bucks depending on what time you buy this game. It may be on sale whenever you watch this review. For a game with a very lengthy and tear-jerking story, with excellent writing and a lot of funny moments that legit made me laugh. If you like the writing in games like Uncharted, a lot of those witty, quick jokes and characters going back and forward, you'll love this game.
Halfway there, by Septimus. I do not like you. Try and get that along.
With tons of side content divided over multiple forests, deserts, even villages. I guess to summarize, I could say if you liked God of War 2018, you're gonna absolutely love this one. As I mentioned before, they essentially took the game of the year and made it even better.
Yeah, that's kind of everything that I wanted to say. I think that the biggest compliment that I could give this game, which I haven't even mentioned yet in the entire review, is that it feels like this game was made by people who actually play video games. That might sound kind of weird, but especially nowadays, with games releasing that are half-assed, unfinished, with terrible game mechanics, sometimes you really think like, Jesus fucking Christ, who in the hell thought... Okay, who thought this was a good idea? This is terrible. There's just none of that in this game. All of it, it just works. No, but it really does just work. It's an almost flawless game. Truly a great experience and maybe one of my favorite games. I don't know if it is one of my favorite games of all time, but it's at least the best game I've played this year. So yeah, go out and buy it. I don't really give ratings. I never really had an ending in mind. I just throw stuff at the screen, and when I don't know what to say anymore, I just abruptly end the video.